4:30. I am going to call the August 9, 2016 meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Could I have a motion, please, concerning our agenda?
Move approval of the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Could I have a similar motion, please, concerning our consent agenda?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Mr. Schwant, do we have any customers to be heard?
No, not that I see.
Okay. Mr. Schwant, do you have any recognitions you want to make?
No, not today. Thank you.
My pleasure. Mr. Schwant, do you have any old business?
No.
Good.
I do.
What old business would you have?
I actually have 3 items, 2 questions and one comment. Start
We're
with a
only
comment.
entitled to one.
I'm going to, I can do 3. I'm going to do 3 right now.
Okay.
They're really good. First one, you missed last meeting, but I want to just point out that Chris was dressed to the hilt. I mean, he did look like a general manager.
As opposed to how our attorney looks?
No, it was more Joe when he was up here, you know,
Yeah.
in a T-shirt. But for 2 serious matters, or 2 questions actually. The first question I had on my list is, I'd heard there was going to be more resurfacing going on that the city was going to do starting next year. Roads resurfacing, road redoing, and I want to make sure that
They could actually do more than they're doing this year?
Anyway, but I just want to make sure that we are in connection with engineering to make sure that we actually are hand in hand as they go in and we need to replace water pipe, that we actually are doing that.
Yeah, I mean, Chris can talk to this as well, but yeah, annually we try really hard to work together and get a work plan jointly so we can make sure we're replacing water main wherever there's street work being done.
Yep.
So, but Chris maybe has more
Chris?
information.
Chris Knutson, Water Division Manager. So as Ralph alluded to, quite a few mill and overlay projects planned for next year. Good example of cooperation this year in terms of the Sims project. Hoping to kind of repeat that effort for next year and coordinate with mill and overlay projects planned for South Moorhead, specifically between 20th and 24th Avenue South. Been in conversations with the city since July 4th, still hoping to kind of get some resolution in terms of a few items, but working on the coordination piece and hoping to hear back really soon as budget time will be rapidly upon us. Wonderful.
Do we know how many feet, miles, yards, whatever?
We're looking at about 4,500 feet MPS doing by ourselves, and then about 4,500 feet or so coordinating with the city mill and overlay projects in that area. So, and part of the MPS work would actually coordinate with city work as well. So probably 2/3 or so would coordinate with city work of the work we're doing.
Perfect. So. And that's all old pipe that we would take out?
Yeah. Yep. It's all old cast iron pipe that needs to go.
Perfect. Cool. And then the second item I have, thanks Chris, the second item I have, and again, we've talked about this as well, where are we on the underpass? If there is a special session, if the money comes to the city, where are we on the issue of who's going to pay, no, not who is going to pay, how the relocation of the utilities are going to be paid for?
Well, we don't have any agreement with the city as to who would pay. The issue, if we can back up just a little bit, is, you know, we have electric lines or high voltage electric line and a couple of main distribution lines and a raw water line in that area. None of them need replacing, such as, you know, they're not cast iron, so they're perfectly fine and they're in that place, and we would expect them to be relocated as part of the project cost. Mm-hmm. We don't have any agreement to that effect, but that's what our position would be. I know we have had conversations regarding that, and the city will not be 100% funded for that project if if they get the money for that, and then there may be some conversation between the commission and the council as to whether we're 100% compensated for the relocation of that, but I would guess it would be close to that. Mm-hmm. I know Travis is getting an RFP ready for the relocation costs of the transmission line. He's walking to the podium, so I'll let him talk about that.
Travis?
Travis Schmidt, Electrical Engineering Manager. Since the bill did not pass in late May, my staff and I have been working to put an RFP together to work through the transmission relocation portion of that, because water was basically at a 95% engineered for the underpass. None of the electric stuff was, so we are working to try to figure that out, just so that we're trying to be at least hopefully ahead of the game before it gets approved. So whether they have a special session or not, we don't know. So we're trying to do what we can to get ahead of the game.
Am I hearing that this is a matter that should be taken up between the policymakers boards?
Well, I think this would be a good conversation, starting maybe at the G4 group and then moving on from there.
Yeah. Because, I mean, when you said that we don't have an expectation to pay for it, I mean, have we shared that with us, with engineering or the city saying, listen, you know, we are not budgeting for it, we have no plan to pay for it? Or is it just something we're discussing at this level here?
Well, we had conversations, you know, back this spring about not paying for it. And,
Okay.
you know, we've gone back and forth on that. But at that time, if the project doesn't happen, it's kind of a moot point. So, I mean, like I say, there hasn't been anything, you know, no agreements between us and the city. That would be the cleanest if we had some sort of an agreement, but we don't have that at this time.
You want me to take it to the G4?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll bring it up in our meeting, our next meeting with our liaisons.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
You had a third item, I believe, that you
No,
were going...
that was 3. Remember,
that
I said
cover everything?
clothing, I did resurfacing and underpass. That's 1, 2, 3.
So you're done?
I'm done.
We can go on now?
I'm done.
Okay,
We can move
perfect.
on now.
Okay, thank you.
Just further discussion. As far as going to G4, is that sufficient? Or do we
Probably not, but it's a good starting point.
Okay.
So at least they can get it on their list of things to talk about, and we can as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's got to start somewhere, and it doesn't necessarily happen at the staff level unless something has changed. So, I mean, if this is a matter that we have to talk about, and they're only going to be partially funded, they're going to be very reluctant to pay for our costs. So,
Yeah, as far as, you know, it happening at staff level, you know, we've had conversations with the interim city manager, but I don't know if this would be really part of his work plan per se. We have had in the past couple of years some very good luck with getting agreements with the city. Those agreements tend to be between the commission and the council, which, you know, we talked about this at our staff level. You know, we can work toward like a memorandum of understanding between myself and the city manager or the staffs, but it just doesn't seem like if it's a hot and heavy issue like the underpass, I don't think we're going to be able to resolve it at our level. And that's where I think starting at the G4, that's a good place to start. And then, you know, the council and commission.
well,
will
I
talk
would
about after
believe,
that.
hot and heavy issue that it is, that's certainly not a project that we want to in any way, shape, manner, or form delay.
Right.
It's very much needed in this community.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be a significant partner in it just because of what we've got in that area.
Yep.
You know, but partner
Well,
doesn't
those
mean.
conversations should be taking place, and if you'd at least bring that up at the G4 level.
And it's a big ticket item, right? We were estimating, what, 3 million? Somewhere around there? 2 or 3 million?
I thought it was,
So we're talking a big ticket item. right?
Yeah.
So we need to
I think we're,
make sure.
talking close to 4 million.
Okay. Thanks.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay. We don't have any members of the city council here tonight. Both of our council representatives are otherwise occupied. Members of the Public Service Commission, anything to Mr. Bakke?
I wait till I'm recognized.
I see that, and I thank you for that.
This is only semi-MPS related, but on Saturday, the Beyond Yellow Ribbon coordinated an event to ceremonially name 15th Avenue North in Moorhead from the river to 11th Street. as Bearcat Way in honor of the National Guard unit that's stationed out there. It is part of Moorhead Public Service because out of the event sponsorship funding, MPS contributed $300 toward the event project, and we use that money provided by Beyond Yellow Ribbon, MPS, and the VFW Auxiliary to pay for the signs, to pay for refreshments, to pay for entertainment. I mean, we started out with bagpipes and we finished with an a cappella chorus. It was really a cool day. So thanks to MPS for helping sponsor it.
And I can tell you that it has not gone unnoticed that it's now Bearcat Way, because I've had a number of people asking me about it.
Well, the signs are bigger than the street signs.
Exactly, and you had told me what it was all about, so I knew the answer to the question.
Cool.
So, Ralph,
I also waited until it was recognized.
Very good, Rob.
I'm glad that you're finally getting them trained less.
So I have one more item on talking about G4. So we had a meeting this week about the land policy, the four of us, and we came back with a lot of research we had done. There's a little bit more we're going to do. I'm actually traveling to the cities on business this week, and I'm going to do some research down there. But I think we're getting close to something that is going to be very viable. There's going to be one big issue, and that is maybe one piece of what we are proposing is unclear under Minnesota law right now. Or the law may be clear, but the AG's opinion may not be. So, but we are making progress, and so I think within the next month or so we'll have something to present.
Wonderful. Anything further?
That's it.
Mr. General Manager?
I don't have anything other than what's in the written report.
Okay. I'm going to take us down to item 9, which is to approve the assignment of the WAPA firm electric service allocation and approve the allocation agreement with Minnesota State Colleges and Universities and to implement a WAPA allocation credit. Who's speaking to this?
I'll start speaking to this one. If you've got questions, I may call on our staff to assist me. This one is something that we've been working, this is a good item. We've been working on this for about a year and a half. And you're familiar with where we get our power supply. We get 50% of our power supply through Western Area Power Administration, through contracts, firm service contracts that we have. We get the other 50% from Missouri River Energy Services, which is really our own power plants that we've built jointly with other municipal utilities. What has happened here in the past couple of years, and you remember the state hospital in the city of Fergus Falls, they had a WAPA allocation for many, many years. When the state hospital shut down and was no longer a state facility, there was a WAPA allocation that, was reserved for a nonprofit state activity that WAPA wanted to assign to someone else. They were unable to find anyone in the Fergus area to use this, so they approached Moorhead Public Service and asked if we, knew of anyone and we just said, well, how about MSUM? And that started the conversation. The conversation continued. The contracts are long-term power supply contracts. They're not very familiar with those. They actually had to run them through the state. So it took some time to get everyone to understand what it is we're talking about. And then we had to work on how we were going to structure some type of a power supply where they would have that as their base power supply, and then we would provide them with supplemental power above that. So they're really like we are, we get our base WAPA, and then we have Missouri River supplemented. MSUM now will have WAPA as their base power supply, and then Moorhead Public Service will be their supplemental power supplier. The power supply from Western Area Power is hydropower, so it's very inexpensive, and so it's a very good thing for them to get. MSUM will save about $78,000 annually on their power bill. Moorhead Public Service, actually, because this is new power supply coming into the city of Moorhead. MSUM is going to get that, but that actually relieves us from some of the obligation that we had in supplying them with power. So we actually buy less from Missouri River and coincidentally more from Western Area Power. So we actually save some money as well on our power supply. So this is a kind of a win-win lose, if you will, to Missouri River, but Missouri River is they're fine with it. Anyway, so I mean, if you're in the mode of selling more power, of course, MRS would be a little upset about that. So would we. We're selling less power to Missouri or to MSUM. However,
I didn't think anybody could make this more complicated than the documents
sorry.
you put in front
Well,
of us.
it's
But he did.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I mean, it's just it is a complicated
everything
agreement.
going to
We've
law
got-
school? Okay.
We've got a number of agreements that you're going to approve. I mean, because we've got to wheel power basically to them. So, I mean, those things are, you'll approve them, then the council will
Well,
approve
I would
them.
assume that we're going to be losing that portion of electric sales that we would otherwise sell to MSUM.
Right.
Okay, so is it a net win for us or a net loss for us in terms of gross revenue?
In terms of gross expenses, a net win. Gross revenue is a net loss, but the net is a win. They save 78,000. We actually save about that same amount. So our actual power bill, the net will go down by 78,000. So we'll buy.
So it's a
that.
wash, is what you're saying?
No. I mean, okay, well, if you want to look at it that way, we're going to save 150,000, half it's going to go to MSUM, if you want to look at it that
Okay.
way.
So we come out ahead.
We come out ahead,
That's what I wanted to hear.
and MSUM comes out ahead.
Okay, so it's wonderful for everybody.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay. Any further discussion on this before I torture it and Mr. Schwann tries to explain it again? Do I have a motion to approve this item?
I move approval of item number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Bakke. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Takes us to item 10, which is to
I want
approve.
to make a comment. I want to say that motion was made by a dragon and seconded by a dragon. That doesn't have to go in the minutes. I'm just pointing that out. You seconded, didn't you, John?
Yeah, you did.
Yes, he did.
And I didn't because I was waiting for it.
Thank you.
Well, on behalf of all of us, MSUM is a wonderful part of our community. The two dragons to my right and left, well, that's yet to be discovered. Anyway, item 10, let's approve change order number 1 for the Southeast Main and 12th Avenue South water main improvements. Christopher, it looks as though you're going to speak to this issue.
Yep, Chris Knutson, Water Division Manager. I'll give just a brief update on the project. Working on Southeast Main and 12th Avenue South, this project started in early May. The intent is to replace about 2,200 feet of 6-inch cast iron water main with a new 12-inch PVC water main. Ran into some material supply issues on the project, whereby a couple of the incorrect gaskets were installed during installation, incompatible gaskets with the pipe being installed. And so MPS staff has been helping the contractor identify and locate those leaks to keep the project on track. Why we have a change order is because the project, due to that material discrepancy, is delayed significantly. We've got a city project coming up on 12th Avenue and 25th Street that they're scheduled to start on, I believe, August 22nd or so. I approached the contractor about change ordering the project to release the work at 12th Avenue and 25th Street so we could use a different contractor to get it done by that time frame. So literally, if we approve the change order tonight, I'm going to take a different contractor and start tomorrow morning. We'll be starting right away to get this thing done before the city comes in with their proposed improvement. They're actually paving 25th Street this year, so that street in the industrial park will get paved. We want to get our water main done
And we
ahead
can
of time.
take those steps within the open bidding process?
We did. So the project was bid openly. The project scope was, it was about $280,000 project. One of the components of the project was alternate A, which was about $25,000 worth of work. That was bid. We awarded the base bid and alternate A for the project. we're going to change orders such that alternate A work will be deducted from the total contract amount. We will award alternate A work to the next lowest bidder on the bidders list. So
Are we going to have an increased cost as a result of this?
it'll be deducted, they bid like $500 less than the contract that was awarded for that particular work.
How did we get to this point in terms of them putting in the wrong gaskets or whatever it was that they put in? What, was there not an inspector on the job?
We had our inspector, I'm the project manager, our inspector was on the job. We didn't know that they used the incorrect gaskets on the pipe when they put it in. They were dealing with the supplier directly. Long story, Ellingson is disputing some of the issues they've had with the pipe with the material supplier, so we're not fully apprised of the conflict between the supplier and the actual pipe that was put in the ground. We've used this particular pipe, we've probably put in at least a mile of it with our own crews and never had a problem with it. So we felt comfortable with the material, but
So the pipe isn't substandard, the gaskets were.
correct.
Was that different?
They were different, so they used the wrong gaskets for, they changed the gasket design from last year to this year. They used some of last year's gaskets on a couple sections of pipe. That, I believe, is what has led to the leaks on the pipeline. We will get, so far about 1,600 feet or so has been passed. We've identified all the leaks. We've fixed the issues with cooperation of Ellingson. So we have about 500 feet or so remaining to be passed.
Did any of this have to be excavated?
Several sections did, but the installation occurred in ditch right-of-way, so we're 13, 14 feet down in ditch right-of-way. So no, for example, not good situation would be if we had to excavate under 12th Avenue. It's a very busy road. There's a lot of other, MnDOT's using it as a detour right now, so that would have been nearly impossible. No leaks are identified under there. That's really positive. All the leaks we found have been in ditch right away. Ellingson, we've worked with Ellingson. They've fixed them as we found them. So,
Who did the excavation?
Ellingson.
Okay, so that was not, we have not borne any costs as a result of their,
The additional cost would be in terms of additional inspection by MPS and additional assistance.
are we going to be reimbursed for any additional costs that we've experienced because of this mess?
There's discussion on how to deal with that particular issue. There will likely be more change orders associated with that.
Is this going to require some kind of documentation in terms of whatever agreement is arrived at with the contractor and with the new contractor?
There should be.
We had John Shockley look over what we were doing on this project. He approved the change that we were going to make.
There you go.
Okay,
I like brief answers.
okay. We'll talk about that answer. Okay, anything further? John?
I have a significant concern of how the additional cost or the impact of this is going to affect Moorhead Public Service. So I would agree with Ken as far as we should have this documented somehow as far as how that we're going to be relieved of this cost. By the
Our costs will
contractor.
be reduced by about $500 by making this change.
Well, I understand that part, Chris, but the additional time and expense that have incurred with staff as well as due to this error.
It would seem to me if an inspector is on site, they should at least check the packaging that these gaskets come in to determine that they've got the right number. And they don't put them in the ground 14, 15 feet below grade.
So that's kind of a secondary issue to the timeliness associated with this matter. It is an issue that needs to be addressed, but it's an ancillary one to this particular item.
Okay, to that extent, I would still want it to be examined by our legal counsel to determine that, yet, A, it's timely and meets with whatever construction period you want it to meet with, but also that any issues that we may have going forward are properly documented. Am I speaking out of turn?
But that is independent of the change order, right?
That's independent of the change
Okay.
order. But yeah, well, it's all part and parcel of the whole process. The change order is one thing, but then we have to have some documentation when we make this change order with the contractor to deduct that amount. Then you've got to have something else in terms of documentation with the new contractor and how that's going to be handled, as well as the cost that John's alluding to in terms of the increased inspection and anything else that was increased as a result of them putting the wrong gasket in the ground.
Right.
We
So-
shouldn't absorb those costs. Our client, or our customer shouldn't absorb those costs.
Correct.
And if there was properly inspected, that wouldn't have been a problem. I wouldn't think.
The,
Am I wrong?
so, because the new contract with the new contractor is less than $25,000, and we had multiple bidders on that, by state statute, we don't have to go get quotes.
That
We
part-
can proceed with,
That part I understand.
Yep.
Okay. But I think we're also looking at the big picture in terms of all of the other things that are ancillary to this whole process.
But do you have an issue approving the change order?
No, I don't.
Okay. So what we're asking you is basically keep track of the extra expenses. and
Absolutely.
We'll deal with that at a later point.
Well, we are going to be going out almost immediately, however, and hiring another contractor. Is that
But that's
correct?
for a different
just to
project.
complete that scope of work,
No,
identified.
it's still within the same project. Because we're deducting it off the one project and adding it to somebody else.
Right, but the contractor is still responsible. Ellingson, who bid the main contract, is still responsible for completing all of their contract work on the deadlines that they've proposed in their bid document. So they still have to complete their entire scope of work with the exception of the work at 12th Avenue and 25th Street.
Okay. Can I have a motion concerning this item?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second?
Again, two dragons. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign.
There's too much overlap for
I'm going to move down to item 11. We will be going into closed session. The meeting will now be closed for executive session as permitted by the Minnesota statutes, Section 13D05, Subdivision 3C, to discuss transactions involving parcels number 58-423-0090 and 58-900-2855 in the city of Moorhead. Will there be any action expected as a result of the meeting, John?
No action is expected.
Okay. Could I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that we go into closed session and adjourn our meeting at the end of closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Bakke. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We are now in closed session.